and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Boys of Tommen series. This series was so good. I devoured all 6 of these books, and they are pretty thick. Like, this one's like 800 pages, and then this is the smallest one at I think 600. And I devoured them in less than a month. I started reading them the very end of June, like the literal last week of June. I finished them, I think, on like July 19th, maybe July 20th. I sped run them because I was so invested. Like, these books are addicting. I was hooked. I guess he's going to hang with us for a little bit. Starting off with Binding 13, we are following Johnny and Shannon. This is kind of the kickoff of the whole series. The book is set in 2005 Ireland, so it kind of has this very aesthetic nostalgia feeling. I was 2 years old in 2005. However, I do understand this feeling of the early 2000s. I also think this whole story, like all of the books, the whole series, was very reminiscent of a early 2000s teen drama. Like, I'm thinking The OC, I'm thinking One Tree Hill, I'm thinking even like the later ones like Pretty Little Liars. Like, it was giving those vibes. We have a dual POV situation with Johnny and Shannon. Johnny is a star rugby player who is hiding an injury that not only is a little embarrassing, but it could also potentially end his career that hasn't started yet. He's been recruited by like the academy, that's where he's training, and it's like Ireland's rugby hub, I want to say, and he's projected to be this big rugby star. However, this injury he feels like is limiting him and is going to stop him from reaching his full potential. So he kind of hides it, and that's what he's kind of dealing with throughout the book. Shannon, on the other hand, has a harder problem to deal with. She has been bullied so much at her old school and so viciously and aggressively that her mother takes out a loan to send her to Tommen, the private school where all these rich kids go. It's where Johnny goes. And not only is Shannon like terrified of being bullied again, this is her fresh start and she doesn't want to ruin it. That is like paralyzing fear for her, is being bullied again. But she's also being abused at home by her father. And every second of this girl's life in Binding 13 is very sad. It is very hard. And then every second she's with Johnny, it's like he's her safe space. They end up forming a friendship. He ends up starting to look out for her because he sees her as this helpless creature that he needs to protect. Throughout this book, they become each other's soul confidants, which was very nice to see. I don't usually like slow burns, but this was the slowest burn and I was here for it. I thought it was written really well. I thought that their relationship developed really well and organically, and I thought that their friendship was the cutest thing ever. Like, when Johnny, he writes a note to her and it's pretty much like, will you be my friend? Circle yes, no. And it's the cutest thing ever. And that whole scene on the school bus that leads up to that moment, like when they're going to this rugby tournament, I thought was done so well. I thought it was beautiful, and I thought that it really encapsulated what a friendship kind of would look like, this like growing friendship. The beginning of this book was really slow for me, not just because of the slow burn aspect, but because it was a lot of setup, which I think dragged on for over 100 pages, and it was really hard for me to get into because of that. There is a scene really early on, I think it's a whole chapter if I remember correctly, and it's just like Shannon's first rugby game, and it's like a play-by-play of rugby. And I'm not shaming rugby here, but I'm simply stating I don't know a thing about rugby. I've never watched a rugby game, and having to read a play-by-play for a whole chapter was really hard for me. However, I can only think of one instance in this entire series that happened. It was one chapter that was really hard for me. Looking at that, the slow start was really getting to me. However, once you hit that 100, 150 threshold, you are completely invested. I loved every second of the rest of this series, and all the slowness at the beginning. Like, we jump off a dock and swim 50,000 miles per hour in the end, because why was the finish line like we're never going to reach it? Because at the end it is like go, 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 go. We leave it on the biggest cliffhanger ever, and we are in the middle of such chaotic action. I don't even know how to describe how you leave this book. You leave this book with so much fear and being terrified of what has just happened. You are so upset. You are so heartbroken. you need to know, you just jump right off this book and into the next one. And that's the only way I can describe it, because the ending of this book is so chaotic and intense. I don't know how you don't pick up the next book immediately. I ended up rating this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book is Keeping 13, and we pick up right in the action that we left Binding 13. For this book, it's kind of the opposite. The beginning is really, really intense, pedal to the metal. Everything is happening, and then it kind of slows up, and we kind of get all of the resolutions towards the end, because this is the wrapping up of Johnny and Shannon's story. They both experience a lot of development here, with Johnny kind of conflicted, feeling like he could have done more and he could do so much more, and then also being conflicted with what he really wants now, because so much of his life has been rugby, and now he has Shannon, and he has this new outlook on life that, like, not everything is about rugby. Like, love is the thing that you should want in life because it enhances your life. And then you have Shannon getting more confident, more bold, more ready to stick up for herself and her friends. She is no longer the scared, timid little girl in the first book that isn't going to say anything to anyone. She is now ready to stand up a little more for herself. She is not, the most confident, the most bold. However, compared to Binding 13 Shannon, she is growing into herself and becoming so much more than she was. Their relationship gets a lot stronger here because they are working through their problems together rather than letting those problems like drive them apart. And I really appreciated that, because a lot of times in books, the problem arises and then it becomes this force driving couples apart. And I feel like in this book specifically, they were leaning on each other more and needed each other more in these moments rather than being driven apart by these moments. And lastly, I think that this book set up the next book, Saving Six, so well. This is Joey's story, who is Shannon's older brother. I think his parts in Keeping 13 really elevated him and kind of made me want to know more, made me want to see his story and how it played out, especially with his role in their, messed up family dynamic. Set up his story extremely well. Now on to Saving Six, the first book that I have. This story is about Joey and Aoife, and we see Aoife a lot in the first 2 books. However, she is not a character, if that makes sense. She's a character, but she's not like fleshed out. She is not a 3-dimensional person. She is simply Joey's girlfriend who is there for him. She loves him. She does things to help him. That is her role in Binding and Keeping 13. Saving Six is a setup book, so it kind of shows the development of Joey and Aoife's relationship from the age that they meet when they're about 12 years old until they're about 16 or 17, right before the events of Binding 13 start. There is no crossover scenes in this book. This book was really heartbreaking because you get to watch how Joey became Joey. You see Darren leaving him. You see his responsibilities being piled on, and all of this anger he's feeling towards not only his parents for putting him in this situation, but also from having to raise 4 other kids. He has his 3 younger brothers and he has Shannon to look after and protect. He doesn't get to be a kid. He gets to be a father. He gets to be a son who steps up and protects his mother. He has all of these people who are counting on him, as well his dad is drinking his own money away and then coming home and abusing the whole family. And you get to see how all of that turns him into the person who is trying to escape. He is looking for an escape from his reality. On the flip side, you get to see Aoife in a new light. It really fleshes out her character. Her biggest thing is that she does not trust easily. The one person she should not trust is Joey, but due to the years that they've had where he's always come through for her, he's always been there for her, he has been her best friend, her rock, and she does trust him. And because of that, his addiction is so hard. It creates this like toxic relationship that was so interesting to read about. Joey is the worst thing that happens to Aoife's life, but on the flip side, Aoife is the best thing that happens to his life. She is the only thing he has to look forward to in life. The only thing he has to actively love and enjoy in life is his relationship with her. And on the flip side, he is tearing her apart internally based on his actions. I also really liked that this book set up a lot of more family dynamics, and we get to see the town a lot more, where they live, the school that Joey attends. We didn't get to see a lot of that in Shannon's perspective because she was being pulled out and brought to Tommen. But in Joey's perspective, we get to see all of it, and we kind of get to see the way that the other side lives. We also highlighted Joey's very complicated relationship with his mother, and how she not only views him as a miniature version of his father, which really bothers him inside. It's like his biggest scar on the inside and trauma that he has to deal with is that his mother looks at him and sees his father. His mother hates him and still turns around and relies on him, and he still comes back every single time. It is a very confusing, conflicting relationship, but I think it was written so well because that is how life works. I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say. It is very real to have a relationship like this, parent-child, where there is that conditional love, yet his mother relies on him so much, but can't show him the smallest bit of love or affection, and views him as scum in comparison to Darren, his older brother. I ended up rating this a 4 out of 5 because it was amazing. I loved it. Up next, we have Redeeming 6, which is the wrapping up of Joey and Aoife's story, where you can see she is thick. This one had a lot of overlaps with Keeping and Binding 13, which I loved, because one of the things I was doing in Binding and Keeping 13, when Joey was in a scene, it was always like there was something else there. Like there was the time Shannon walked in on him and Adele speaking about something, or when he ran out of the house before the big event of Keeping 13 happens because, you know, he got mad and stormed out, and then he wasn't there for that big event. I wanted to know what he was doing. I wanted to know what he was thinking. And all of these scenes, there's always this mystery around Joey. So being able to see those scenes in his perspective in Redeeming 6 was like my Christmas gift. Thank you very much. Christmas in July has come because I get to know what Joey was doing. This book ramps everything up. So if Saving 6 was just like the setup for this story, I would say, because Redeeming 6, everything is more intense. The pressure that Joey is feeling, more intense. It's becoming too much for Aoife to take because she has her own issues and problems that she has to deal with, but she can't lean on Joey. In the way that Johnny and Shannon were leaning on each other to get through their issues in Keeping 13, Aoife cannot lean on Joey because he is not stable. He is fully into his drug addiction, and she is the only thing keeping him semi-okay, and she can't even pull him out of the addiction. She has this big problem and this serious thing. She needs someone to lean on. She needs somebody to confide in. She needs to tell Joey. She needs to have Joey be her support in this, and she can't because this is going to tip him over the edge. That's how she feels. And so you get to see Aoife struggling with this thing, and you get to see Joey having no idea, but also jumping off the deep end because of everything going on in his life. He hits rock bottom. In the end of Keeping 13, we do not know if he's coming out of this. He hits rock bottom, and he is there at the end of that book. So being able to see his rock bottom probably happened around here in this book. We still had a bunch more to go. So we got to see him either fall more or come out of his rock bottom. I won't spoil which one happens, but I will just say that this book was heartbreaking, and I didn't think it could get worse than this in the sense of my emotional capacity for pain. Also, quick shout out to Lizzie and Gibbsy. They really pulled through as side characters in this book. Gibbsy did something for Aoife that was so in character, but also I didn't expect at all to happen in this book. And he is kind of a support for her in that moment. And then Lizzie at the same time supports and pulls Joey through something when I don't think any other character would have been able to do. They don't have a friendship. It's just they know each other. They are very similar in a lot of ways, and you kind of overlook that as a reader because they don't interact a lot. But when they do interact, man, it is powerful. And I can't wait to see what they do with this in the next book, because there is a scene in Redeeming 6 that happens really early on where It's in Aoife's perspective, and it's Joey and Lizzie just talking at a party. And we haven't hit that point in the timeline in Lizzie's book yet. And I really hope we see that scene in that next book that comes out, because I want to know what they were talking about. And because it's from Aoife's perspective, we have no idea what was said, but we do know that the two of them have this relationship. My cat is yapping at me. Everybody saying hi today. Say hi. I'm a Boys of Tommen fan. No. What was I saying? We kind of know that they have this relationship, but we have no idea what it entails, because we've seen it mostly from Aoife's point of view, besides the one scene where it's in Joey's point of view and kind of pivotal to the story. Up next, we have my most anticipated book, which was Taming 7, which is the story of Claire and Gibbsy. I haven't said much on this, but Claire and Gibbsy were my favorites up until this book. I loved them as side characters. I thought that they were so funny. They like built off each other so well, and they added this like positivity and this comedic relief to books that are downright tragic, and they kind of help you get through that because of how funny they are, because of how well they are the glue that kind of like gets the group together, and they bounce the humor off of the other characters, and they give like Shannon and Johnny and even Hugh and Lizzie the chance to be funny. My biggest issue with Taming 7 is that it just feels like not a lot is happening in the first half of the book. These characters' whole existence in the other books has been the comedic relief, and suddenly they're not that, because we are in their minds, we're in their heads. So there isn't that levity anymore, because they are not there to be funny. They are not there to provide this positive burst into the book. They are there to explore their own trauma and their own issues and their own relationship. And I think that that's really hard to deal with. I think it was really good that we get to see that. However, it's just hard to come to the reality that these are not just like the funny people in the corner. These are real people who have very serious problems as well. I do like the direction the story is going in, and I like that this takes place after Keeping 13, so we kind of get pushed further into the Boys of Tommen timeline. In the beginning of the book, Claire was falling really flat. Like, she didn't really do much, and that was really upsetting for me, because Claire is one of the characters that I really, really loved. I just felt like in this book she was not very Claire, which I don't even know if that makes sense. And then the other half of the book, I just was really frustrated with her, because she outs this big secret of Gibbsy's that wasn't hers to tell, and she outs the secret as a like, oh gotcha moment, and doesn't really think in that moment about how it's going to affect him and how it's going to devastate him, and it's more of a I'm winning moment, if that makes sense. She thinks she's defending him, but she's not. She is just further hurting him. And then to go from that to the ending of this book, minor spoiler here, but I think the fact that Gibbsy forgives Claire so quickly in the end for outing this big secret, just I didn't like it. I like when he says, I do not want to be your friend. That hurt, and I just don't feel like we got to see the depths of how much that hurt Claire. And I also feel like we didn't get the longevity of it. Like, it didn't last that long, and I wanted it to hit more. And maybe that's just like me craving sadness, but like, it would have elevated Claire's character to kind of sit in that pain for longer than she did. And I understand that there's an argument to be made that Claire is Gibbsy's safe space, so it makes sense that he forgave her so quickly. I just wish Claire sat in that pain a little longer, and we kind of delved into those emotions a little deeper. The end of this book, where we kind of see this divide in the friend group, also hurt a lot, because in the next book we're going to see the friend group kind of forming. So seeing the breakings of it at the end of this book, and that doesn't really get resolved, really hurt, because this is such a found family. People kind of pick sides on an issue where there shouldn't be any sides. Everybody should be a team. Was very heartbreaking. I ended up rating Taming 7 3.5 stars. The last book in the series so far is Releasing 10, and that is the story of Hugh and Lizzie, and this one I actually do think is the longest. It's about 800 pages, and it was the hardest to read. I think this whole series has trigger warnings like scattered throughout it. I think that this one though is by far the worst. You might not be triggered by things in the other 5 books, but this one might trigger you. It is really hard to read. There was so many times that I had to physically put my book down and just be like, I need a minute, because it is really raw, it is really tense, and it is trauma that I've never thought about to this extent, and I've definitely never read in such detail that it felt like I was there. It is real trauma, it is devastating, and then to think that it happens more often than anyone would like to think is just truly tragic, and it breaks your heart to read. We are following Lizzie and Hugh in this book, and it is kind of like Saving Six, where it is a setup book. It's not really doing much payoff. It is mostly building up to things. There are some resolved stuff by the end, but mostly it is building up to whatever happens next in this series. And it follows them from the age of like 6 until they're about 14 or 15. I didn't think I'd like that, but I actually really did, because not only does it give us a harsher look at this trauma, because we are sitting with them when they experience it, but we're also get to see this friend group kind of form. And at this point, it is Hugh, Gibbsy, Claire, Feely, and then Lizzie joins. Kind of getting to see the foundations of these friendships was like beautiful, because they add in Johnny, and eventually Shannon is here. Seeing the birth of this core was really nice, and it was very nostalgic for just childhood, all the games that they played and all the banter that they had. It was very sweet. And it really contrasted what Lizzie was going through, because what Lizzie was going through was so traumatic, and then these people became her safe space, and this friend group is just experiencing childhood, and it is her escape, because she gets to just be a child when she is hanging out with these kids. And that is why she is so attached to them, and why, even though she is so mean in the other books, she's never walking away from these people. She could hate Gibbsy with her whole heart. She's not walking away from him, and it's because of these core memories that are formed in this book. This book is simply tragic, because you're watching Hugh try so hard to help Lizzie, but Lizzie's too far manipulated and too far broken in her own mind and taken advantage of, that her thoughts have been corrupted by other people's thoughts, and she can't think straight, and she has all the answers to all of her problems, but she can't find them because she doesn't know she has the answers, because she's been so manipulated, and her mental health issues and diagnoses weigh on her so much that even though she knows what she knows, she doesn't know that she knows it. I don't like people who think that Lizzie was too mean, because I would make the argument that Lizzie wasn't mean enough after everything she's gone through. Yes, she was mean to the wrong people, and she hurt her friends in ways that nobody should ever hurt their friends. However, seeing what she goes through, I don't think anybody can say she was too mean. I think people can make the argument that she was mean to the wrong people, but she was definitely not too mean. She was not mean enough. Lizzie hating Gibbsy and kind of seeing the formation of that, and why she holds this grudge with Gibbsy so much rather than his stepbrother Mark, is insane to read. And it makes so much sense once you've read it. And it hurts so much more when you think back on that Taming 7 group divide. And there's this one quote that sticks with me, and I won't repeat it because I think it might be a spoiler, but it pretty much is Lizzie talking about why she refuses to call Gibbsy Gibbsy, and she only calls him Thor. And that broke my heart. It was one line, it shattered me. I will say tears were shed with this book. Tears were shed with this whole series, but this book in particular was just so much. And Lizzie and Hugh became my favorite couple, or not even couple, just like pairing. Like, if all of these books are like, these are pairs of people, they are my favorite pairs, because being in their perspectives, it was so hard, but it was also so raw and real because of how much both of them feel everything that's happening. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5, but again, severe trigger warning for this book. I do have a couple notes I wanted to hit as well over just the whole series. First of all, there is this theory I saw, and I absolutely loved it. And if you have read this book and have not heard of this theory, I highly recommend you go look at it. I think it started on TikTok, and it is a theory that Brian, who is Gibbsy's cat, represents Mark. For the people that have read these books, this theory, I went down a rabbit hole, and the evidence that she brings out, and like, it literally felt like I was in high school again, like listening to this, like I was in like AP Lit, because she is drawing parallels in this analysis and then creating these theories, and it was so interesting, and I'm so invested because I believe it. I think Chloe totally used Brian as this metaphor for Mark. I just encourage everybody to go look at it. I really wanted to give that a shout out. I also have been seeing a lot of the snippets that Chloe has been posting on Spotify, and there's one in particular about Lizzie and Gibbsy that I am so ready for, and also so like I don't know if I'll ever be ready for it. So I'm so excited for just future books. I'm so excited for this series to continue. I don't know when it will continue. Like, I don't think that there's a release date for the next book. And obviously, the last thing I want to touch on is the TV adaptation that is coming out. I think it's being made by Prime, so there is a chance it is a really good, faithful adaptation and everybody's watching it, like, you know, Off Campus or The Summer I Turned Pretty. Like, it could be a great book adaptation, and even if it doesn't follow it religiously, it could really celebrate the source material like those two shows I think did. Or there's the chance it becomes an Every Summer After, where I can't get past episode 2 because of how terrible of an adaptation it is. We'll have to wait and see. I'm in the biggest book slump ever now because these books were so good. I do think if you haven't read them and are thinking about reading them, definitely look at the triggers, because there are so many things in these books. There might be a trigger you don't think would be in this book, but then you're reading it and it is. So I would definitely check the triggers for each book and the series overall before you read them. I'm kind of wrapped up. Thank you for listening to this really long ramble about the Boys of Tommen series. I am so glad that I've read it. I am so happy to kind of be back into reading, although I think these books put me back into a slump, and I'm excited to see what I read next. Let me know your thoughts on the Boys of Tommen series down below. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts. And with that, I will see you next time. Bye. Say hi. Up, 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 up. Oh, say hi. Wait, up here. Say hi. Say, my name is Wex, and I approve this message.